session after the event. You'll be able to ask more questions there. So without any further ado, I would like to turn this over and welcome Dr. Klaus Otto Schmidt, the Consul General of Germany, based here in Vancouver, where I'm also calling from. Dr. Schmidt was appointed Consul General for the Federal Republic of Germany in Vancouver in August 2018. He previously served as Consul General for Chengdu, China, and Deputy Head of Mission in Buenos Aires as the head of the cultural section in Tokyo in 2011, and previously in the political section of the Embassy of Tokyo. So I will now turn it over to Dr. Schmidt to learn more about the program.
Yeah, hello, good morning from Vancouver. Hello, East Coast. Good evening, guten Abend nach Deutschland, and good evening to Europe, and greetings to the rest of the world. Welcome to Greener Cities, Better Food, the future of urban farming. Under the umbrella of Germany's Transatlantic Climate Bridge program, the German Consulate General in Vancouver invited the cities of Dortmund, Germany, Vancouver, Canada, and Pittburgh, USA to discuss today with us future climate-friendly food systems. This event series focuses on urban diplomacy and city collaborations in the fight against climate change. Only days before the start of the Glasgow Conference on Climate Change, we hope that also municipalities, regions, and provinces will have a say internationally. Reliable access to healthy, quality food in our cities while limiting our carbon footprint will definitely play a major role in the future and deserves a closer look, as the latest Business in Vancouver top story proves. We are very grateful that so many participants from all over the world are joining us today. I would like to give the floor now, if Malora allows it, to my colleague Brent Hart, the head of the US Consulate here in Vancouver. Thank you so much for supporting our initiative. Enjoy the event.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and guten Abend. Certainly, I'd like to thank Consul General Schmidt for the kind invitation to help launch today's event. It's an honor to be here, and you and your team have certainly assembled a remarkable program. So it's wonderful to see representatives from the cities of Pittburgh, Vancouver, and Dortmund, among our many other esteemed panelists here, virtually gathered to discuss the increasingly important topic of sustainable urban agriculture as a mechanism to combat climate change. Combating climate change and supporting green economies are core priorities for the United States, certainly at the federal, state, and municipal levels. The Biden-Harris administration has wasted no time re-engaging the global community on this shared challenge. On day one in office, President Biden had signed the instrument to rejoin the Paris Agreement, and we too look forward to a very successful COP26 in Glasgow in the coming days. I'm delighted that the city of Pittburgh is doing its part by adopting policies to increase carbon sequestration, decrease food insecurity, and to stabilize food systems. And I praise the efforts of the city under Mayor Bill Peduto. The city has admirably transformed itself into an innovative hub that offers a great example of how to leverage partnerships between governments, national and local, as well as the private sector, that will be required to solve climate change and environmental challenges. As we all know, no single country can tackle the climate change on its own. It will take a global coordinated effort. And that's why initiatives such as the Transatlantic Climate Bridge are so vital. So I would certainly like to extend the United States' sincere gratitude for your efforts to strengthen transatlantic climate diplomacy, and very much look forward to today's event. Thank you, and vielen Dank.
Thank you, Brent. I will now turn it over to Sarah Kirby-Young. Sarah is a counselor for the City of Vancouver. She's committed to a livable Vancouver and believes that people-focused public space planning and urban design support vibrant, healthy, and connected cities. She's serving her first term on the Vancouver City Council. Previously, she was elected to the Vancouver Park Board, where she served as chair. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to participate in this climate bridge this morning, and also appreciate the acknowledgement that we are joining today, at least I am. Welcome to everybody, morning, afternoon, and evening, but I am joining from the ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And that's particularly important because we are fortunate here in Vancouver that their traditional territories have been abundant with food and medicine since time immemorial. The City of Vancouver is a city of reconciliation. And so we have committed to taking action to restore Indigenous food sovereignty that has been disrupted. As we all know, and I think we'll have some deep discussions about today, we're facing many challenges across the globe, including climate change and resource depletion, growing inequity, loss of farmland and farmers, and unequal access to fresh and nutritious food. And as we all know, also, the COVID-19 pandemic has only served to exacerbate these challenges. In the face of these issues, urban food policy and food systems development present strategic opportunities for local governments like ours to make progress towards shared equity and sustainability goals. And I am proud of the role that the City of Vancouver is taking towards this. Vancouver has been working towards a just and sustainable food system since 2003. In partnership with our Vancouver Food Policy Council, as well as an innumerable number of community organizations. We did adopt a Vancouver food strategy in 2013, and that strategy lays out the framework for future actions across our food systems. As part of our commitments under this strategy, also working with our Vancouver Park Board, we support a variety of food systems across all stages of the food system, from production to waste management. And I thought it might be helpful to share a few specific examples today that might stimulate some conversation as part of the dialogue. So for example, to enable local food production and community development, we provide land for 90 community gardens, orchards, and Indigenous food gardens, including a community garden at our own City Hall. To the members of our community that are experiencing food insecurity, we operate 3 inner city meal programs offering nutritious and very low-cost meals 365 days of the year. In the areas of rezoning and development, which is obviously a key responsibility of local government, our sustainability policies include a requirement that large rezonings must incorporate food assets with tactics such as on-site organics management, edible landscaping, or food markets. And to combat greenhouse gas emissions and support a circular economy, we have a Zero Waste 2040 plan that identifies actions to reduce food waste at all points from farm to table. I'll note quickly that we also have urban food guidelines to assist with the production of urban farms and create a more sustainable food system. And I'll also be honest that we haven't always got this right, and we've had some challenges. And so we heard, for example, from farmers that we didn't quite get the urban food guidelines right the first time, and we're working on that. And that includes things like the ability not only to grow, but to sell directly from farms to people in local neighborhoods so that they can have those complete communities. So I want to thank the many organizations that have been doing this work for decades to try to build a sustainable food system. Very excited to be here today and learn from all of you. It's hard work to develop urban food systems, but it's challenging and rewarding, and it's incredibly necessary as we move towards a sustainable economy and society. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll turn it over to Bill Peduto. He's the mayor of Pittburgh. William was elected to the office of the mayor of the city of Pittburgh in the general election, November 2013, and took office as Pittburgh's 60th mayor on January of 2014. Prior to taking office, he'd worked for 19 years in the city council, 7 years as a staffer, and 12 years as a member of council. As a councilman, he wrote the most comprehensive package on government reform legislation in Pittburgh's history. So welcome to Bill.
Thank you, and it's great to see my colleagues from Dortmund and Vancouver. when we're looking at food insecurity and the opportunities of building resilient systems, I think it's very important to understand this type of a transatlantic communication. So many of these issues are talked about on federal levels, but when the rubber hits the road, it really is done at a subnational type of a network. The importance of having this type of a discussion, of creating and learning from one another, is absolutely critical. In this region of the United States, which is considered the Rust Belt, cities of the Northern Appalachia and the Ohio Valley have gathered together in order to look at climate change and our ability to be able to work together through an economic development strategy, not just looking at reducing our carbon footprint, but understanding that the transference of industry is more suitable in an area like ours, which already have the transmission systems, the ability to create energy, and the communities and the workers already in place from the fossil fuel industry, and being able to convert it into renewable and clean tech. It already is here, than to be able to create it new in a different part. When we look at that in the production and the transference of food, we see that same type of an opportunity. This is also the heartland of where much of the United States production of the food industry is also happening. We want to be able to utilize that type of an infrastructure in order not only to be able to recognize what our commitments and our obligation and responsibility is in order to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, but also to rebuild our economy in a post-industrial area, much like the area around Dortmund, much like the area maybe a little bit further out of British Columbia and into the areas around Alberta. These types of similarities work off of post-industrial areas much more in common around the world, and have the opportunity to build from one another and to learn from one another. So as this discussion starts to take place, it is so important that we start to learn and to be able to build subnational diplomacy around policy that will aid and benefit the nations that we work from at the local level.
Thank you, Bill. I would now like to introduce Thomas Westphal, the mayor of Dortmund, was not able to come, but we fortunately have Martin van der Putten here from the city of Dortmund. Martin is the head of international relations for the city of Dortmund since 2019. And before that was working with the city of Dortmund since 2017, and previous to that in wastewater management as CEO. So I will now turn it over to Martin.
Thank you, Melora. Dear Consul General Schmidt, dear Consul General Hart, dear Mayor Peduto, dear Deputy Mayor Kirby-Young, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear online participants. First of all, a warm welcome from Dortmund on behalf of Mr. Thomas Westphal, the Mayor of the city of Dortmund. Unfortunately, as Melora said, the Mayor had to cancel at short notice today, which we regret very much. My name is Martin and I'm the head of international relations of the city of Dortmund. I'm glad that the kick-off event for a fruitful cooperation within the framework of the Transatlantic Climate Bridge takes place today. Dortmund, Pittburgh, and Vancouver are three post-industrial cities that have experienced similar and profound changes in the last few decades. Each city hit rock bottom in the 1980s and 90s after suffering structural change, loss of prosperity, and decline of coal and steel production, as the mayor mentioned so far. Nowadays, we are strong science locations with our universities and research institutes and lively startup scenes. We can proudly say that all three cities are now strong players, well known far beyond their national borders. So just why do local politicians all over the world get together? What we all have in common are the challenges that cities around the world face every day as we continue developing our communities, tackling the pandemic, migration, digitization, and climate change, or working on local food system change. Why we cities cooperate here. We know that metropolitan and post-industrial regions serve as starting points to work on local food system change. Dortmund has already set out to bring about food system change, but we are still at the beginning of this journey. This is why we value the exchange with our international partners. Beyond traditional instruments such as partnerships and agreements between cities, a new term, urban diplomacy, is emerging. Because in the future, united cities, linked by international collaboration and a continual dialogue, will benefit even more from one another. This will be absolutely essential for the future transformation and orientation of foreign policy. We in Dortmund have decided that we want to continue exactly this way of city-to-city cooperation. Urban diplomacy is a driver for innovations, for ensuring prosperity and strengthening democracy and the rule of law. In the futures, we cities around the world will become even more involved in the international political process, be it about food system change or climate change adaptation. I'm sure that especially in the post-industrial cities, there's a role model function and an enormous power of change that must be used. We are very happy to have reliable partners with Vancouver and Pittburgh, but of course also with all the other partners of this event. I would like to thank the German Foreign Office, which launched this Transatlantic Climate Bridge program, and this confirms our actions and supports us in the already good cooperation with our friends from Vancouver and Pittburgh. Thank you very much and have a good discussion.
Thank you, Martin. So with that, let's start our first panel. Our first panel is going to be urban food strategies as a key to combating climate change. The moderator, Jiwon Lee, from the Global Food Program with ICLEI, is moderating today, and she will introduce the other panelists. Jiwon is a senior officer at the ICLEI World Secretariat's Global Projects team and the principal support for the ICLEI Global Food Program. She manages the food-related programs in the World Secretariat and supports the global coordination of the food systems agenda and the organization in close cooperation with the ICLEI regional offices. So I am really looking forward to hearing this discussion, and I will turn it over to Jiwon now.
Thank you, Malora.
Oh, sorry, you'll go over the questions, right? How to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Malora. I would like to first welcome everyone to the first panel of the Transatlantic Climate Bridge event. I'm Jiwon Lee. As Malora said, I'm a senior officer at the ICLEI World Secretariat, and some of you may already know about ICLEI and familiar about it. But just a brief introduction about who ICLEI is that we are a global network of local governments driving sustainability, and we have more than 2,500 network cities around the globe. As an organization that strongly promotes city-to-city exchange, it is a great honor and a pleasure for me to be here and to facilitate this important discussion and exchange among the three cities. So the first discussion will last for about 40 minutes. At the end of the session, I see that we're really good with time. I hope that we could have this 5-minute Q&A session. For the ones who have any questions that arise during the panel discussion, please type in your question in the Q&A window box, not in the chat box, because chat box will be there for the interaction between the audience. So please remember to use the Q&A box for any questions that you may have. And also when you write your Q&A, your questions, please address to whom you would like this question to be answered by. So today's session, today's event is about climate-friendly urban food systems, and we can already extract 3 key words from the short sentence, which are cities, food systems, and climate change. And as many of the participants would know, the relationship among cities, food, and climate change is indeed complex. First, cities are vulnerable to disruption in critical food supplies, as we all experienced during the pandemic periods, and climate change makes it worse. Second, cities are major contributors to the causes of climate change. Currently, 70% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the cities, and the cities will be consuming 80% of the food produced by 2050. Lastly, today's food systems driving and being impacted by the climate change. So now, as we were talking about climate-friendly urban food systems, for some of you it feels a bit quite abstract what this really means on the ground. So today, with our panelists here, they will be able to show you how this concept is shown on the ground by sharing their hands-on experience and how far they have moved forward. So with me here, we have the representative of the cities of Vancouver, Dortmund, and Pittburgh. And as the previous speakers have already mentioned several times, those cities have undergone major transitions away from heavy industry as their economies have shifted. So the 3 cities that are represented by our following speakers, and I'm excited that this is an all-women panel. So we have here from Dortmund, Ms. Alessa Häuser from the Office of the International Relations and Sustainable Development. And from the city of Vancouver, we have Ms. Meg O'Shea, Senior Manager for Economic Transformation. And from the city of Pittburgh, we have Ms. Shelley Danko-Day, the Urban Agriculture and Food Policy Advisor. So I would like to ask the first question to all the 3 panelists. And we will be first hearing about how their cities work on food climate nexus. I would like to start with Alessa about the food climate nexus, and then I would be asking Meg and Shelley about the same questions. You would each have 5 minutes to present, and I'll be raising my pen in case your time is up, but I think so far we're good with time. So now, Alessa, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jiwon, for your kind introduction, and hello to everyone from Dortmund. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. I will just share my screen. So to tell you a bit on how Dortmund works on the food climate nexus, I would like to give you a brief overview about the characteristics of the city that I think are relevant for shaping food strategies in the context of climate change. And Dortmund is, with 600,000 inhabitants, the 9th largest city in Germany. Thus, from a German perspective, we have many people to feed. Dortmund is one of the most densely populated cities in the region, and 23% of Dortmund's area is agricultural land, most of it located in the outskirts of the city. The city is embedded in the metropolitan Ruhr area with 5 million inhabitants. Larger rural areas can be found around the Ruhr area, and from the Dortmund perspective, the topic of rural-urban linkages is to be worked on across cities and an entire region. Dortmund has undergone a huge economic structural change over the past 60 years. So formerly it was center for coal mining, steel industry, and beer production. Nowadays, Dortmund has become a modern university city with diverse industries ranging from logistics to biomedicine, and it has partly redeveloped its large brownfield sites. on one of these sites, high-tech vertical farming project is planned, which will also be discussed by Jan Westra from the company Priva on panel 2. The ruhr area has a strong migration history due to the industrial history we have, and the city has, compared to other large cities in Germany, a relatively high poverty rate, which I think is relevant when talking about food consumption and social equity. And because we want to talk about the food climate nexus, I think it's relevant to say that the city is committed to climate neutrality until 2050. And the current targets require that Dortmund has to reduce 1/3 of its greenhouse gas emissions of 2018 to reach its target for 2030. Food is more and more on the city agenda. However, Dortmund does not have a food strategy yet, but there are many activities going on which can be considered as a preparation for more intensive work on local and climate resilient food systems. I would like to highlight some flagship activities in Dortmund concerning climate resilient food strategies. One field is about participation and learning. So we try to shape the food system change narrative to bring about a change in mind. So we bring poorly aligned people, policies, and topics under one umbrella and try to refocus them. And we do this, for example, in public and educational events, as we can see on the photo. This is a film event with a German filmmaker who is an expert also on food policy and agriculture policies. We have many engaged initiatives in Dortmund, for example, a city farm offering food education for kindergartens and schools. They, for example, harvest potatoes and produce French fries. Or they produce apple juice with the children just to put food education on the agenda. We have a peer learning format for school gardeners, and we, as a municipality, work together with 50 schools here. Within the municipality, we try also to shape this food system change narrative to have this context to work on climate resilient food systems. So we link up with colleagues who work on different aspects of the local food system, for example, health, environment, education, and we learn on how to make food system change happen across departments, because we think this is essential to have really integrated food policies. We have a lot of activities going on in the field of food production in the city region. For example, we have community gardens and edible town projects and public spaces. Due to its history, Dortmund has 167 sites of allotment gardens, and on average 300 kilos of vegetables were harvested per garden in 2020, which I think is very much. We have a community-supported agriculture with 250 households, and this year we had a launch in the city of a cooperative linking consumers in the city with producers in Dortmund's surroundings. And we really need to increase such rural-urban linkages due to the fact that the city cannot feed itself locally, especially not with fresh fruits and vegetables. That we have to increase a reliable demand for good food in the city to give local farmers the security to produce for us. This all, of course, in terms of regionalization of food chains and contributing to climate resilient food systems. We also put food on the political plate. So a new climate action program has been developed in our city since 2019, and it will be submitted to the City Council for a decision next month. So we have a very exciting time. It's the first time that agriculture and food is one of the action fields described in Dortmund's climate action program, which, as far as we know, is also unique in Germany. And a commissioned report accompanied by these activities around the climate action program concluded that, for example, 5 full-time positions have to have to be installed to cover the proposed activities in the action field, and most potential for reducing Dortmund's greenhouse gas emissions in this field is seen in sustainable agriculture, changing eating habits, and reduction of food waste. And last but not least, I would like to hint to the fact that we have a Food Policy Council initiative in Dortmund, which has the aim to implement a local multi-stakeholder platform with a goal to achieve local food system change as well, and climate and food, like the nexus is a topic here as well, of course. It is going to function as an NGO with strong ties to the municipality at the working level. As the municipality, we support this initiative from the beginning onwards. And just to say here that food supply does not belong to the mandatory task of a German municipality, according to German administrative law. So in my point of view, since I observed the Food Policy Council movement in Germany since around 6 years, it is kind of, filling, the Food Policy Council movement is kind of filling this gap. So there's no doubt that food is one of the future topics in municipalities, especially in the context of creating urban resilience and sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alessa. Thanks a lot for the comprehensive introduction. And what really struck me is that how diverse your food-related activities are, even without integrated strategies at the moment. And I'm very happy to see that the food topic and the agriculture topic is well embedded in the climate action plan. And you have also mentioned cross-departmental integration. And given that food's cross-scale nature, it is key that the cross-departmental integration will be leading to the integrated food policies. And this is something that many local governments are also having difficulties. And I really hope that this is something that you will see as well. Thanks a lot, Alessa. Then I would like to move on to Meg, who would present Vancouver's food policies and climate change.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jiwan. It's such a pleasure to be here today to participate and share and learn from our municipal colleagues in other countries. So thank you so much for having us. I am the Senior Manager of Economic Transformation at the Vancouver Economic Commission, and we are the economic development agency of the City of Vancouver. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Councillor Kirby-Young for being here today and for opening this session, and for all of her support for the work that we continue to do at the staff level. So in 2014, Vancouver was designated as a city of reconciliation, and I am an uninvited settler on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. And in that capacity, I share the responsibility to honor the land, the waters, and the people, and do all that I can to enable them to thrive. And as you might imagine, that all of which comes up when we're talking about food and establishing resilient food systems that are both just and circular. Vancouver is not heavily industrialized. I'll refer to an article in The Guardian this week, actually, that named and shamed global banking institutions for backstopping industrial meat production, which of course, as an activity in and of itself, is a large contributor to GHG emissions. And it is also a significant embedded system in our society that maintains high carbon consumption behaviors. So we don't have that in Vancouver. However, we do have lots of opportunity to address the food system, food insecurity, and community efforts to build a better distribution of food that reduces waste, loss, and surplus. Here in Vancouver, the major contributors to our economy are small businesses, largely, that operate in professional services, in retail, and that provide for the tourist industry, which before COVID was a major industry in Vancouver and amounted to billions of dollars of revenue entering the city. We have seen major growth in the tech sector, so software development and creative industries, including film and digital effects. Of course, growth in the green economy. The Vancouver Economic Commission has been committed to growing the green economy for over a decade now. Real estate and finance are significant portions of our economy, and we're also seeing growth in the impact economy. So these are businesses and social enterprises that are working to address social and environmental challenges. But we import our food for the most part. There are some urban agricultural programs, and as Councillor Kirby-Young mentioned, much has been done to grow local food assets, including community gardens, edible landscapes, and the establishment of more and more farmers markets. But we do rely on import from both nearby in the Fraser Valley and other areas of Canada, and of course from afar, all of which was quite disrupted during the pandemic in the last year and a half. In Vancouver, our municipal policies and strategies addressing food are the Vancouver Food Strategy, which is currently under revision, the Zero Waste 2040 strategy, and the Climate Emergency Action Strategy, to name but a few, frankly. And as we all know, addressing food requires action across all the widest possible range of policy, including housing and addressing poverty. The approach that we've taken at the Economic Commission is that first, we need to know what we don't know and where to act in order to achieve the greatest effect to create a just circular economy of food. Rigorous research is foundational to effective programming, policy, and regulations. So I'll mention two of our research studies, that one of which is recently completed and one is currently underway around the circular economy of food. We currently have Deloitte retained through a partnership between the Economic Commission and the City of Vancouver's Solid Waste and Engineering teams and Sustainability Group. Deloitte will conduct a quantitative economic analysis of the local food sector here in Vancouver, not in the greater Vancouver region, but in Vancouver, to determine the total economic value and employment in the food sector and the total associated GHG emissions with that activity. Mapping the system and determining where the food flows in Vancouver allows us to identify where food is wasted, lost, or created in surplus, and therefore to identify the points of intervention for the city and VEC where we can best influence the system. Through the Deloitte process, we're also creating a collaborative task force of agents across the food system that will vet the proposed interventions, ensure that they are feasible and functional, and facilitate coordinated efforts between supply chain nodes. The answer is not at one particular point in the supply chain, it is across and between nodes, and we need collaborative and collective action to really drive the change. The second study, which is recently completed, is a study completed in partnership with the Food Systems Lab at Simon Fraser University. And this was a study that applied the Right to Food framework to the food system and to the objectives of the circular economy of food to prepare a guide for creating a just circular economy of food in Vancouver. So really this study, and I have new cats and they're very disruptive. Really this study investigated the relationship of the objectives of the circular economy, which of course are to eliminate surplus, loss, and waste, to the systems in place in Canada that address hunger and food insecurity. In Canada, generally, and in many other countries as well, I know, the systems to address food insecurity and hunger are currently dependent on donations of surplus or wasted food. It isn't wasted if it is eaten, from other nodes or stages of the food cycle. This research produced 9 key action areas that are required to achieve a just circular economy of food. And they include, among others, reporting and accountability frameworks that are accessible and used by all food system agents. So we have a sense of exactly what's happening where. They ask that governments invest in shared infrastructure required to maintain food at its highest value and therefore to be food for as many people as possible. And to support poverty reduction and affordable housing, the identified root causes of food insecurity in our region. So after research, we really want to move to action. And our actions at Vancouver Economic Commission tend to support innovation and accelerate commercialization. That is our role in the economy. Launching in February, the Circular Food Innovation Lab is a partnership, again, with the City of Vancouver and with Emily Carr Emily Carr University for Arts and Design. This is a solutions lab process that will seek businesses and other agents in the food system to commit to participating in a collaborative creative process to design and prototype solutions that build on the findings of the study being completed by Deloitte. Emily Carr University is involved so that interns that are studying systems design will be facilitating those prototype sessions to ensure that the solutions are targeting root causes of unjust or uncircular food system activities. And I'd also like to mention the Zero Waste Demonstration Hub. This is more of an initiative by the city, but VEC is supporting this as well. The city of Vancouver identified land in an urban industrial area that they've now assigned as a zero waste demonstration hub. So innovators from the private sector will apply to test their zero waste solutions and will be awarded a piece of the property for a certain amount of time in order to do so. This service, this provision of space, is really making it possible for innovators to test their innovations in a real world context. They can establish proof of concept and progress to commercialization much more quickly. This will allow them too to track potential waste reduction outcomes and emission reduction outcomes. So we're thrilled to be here today and share some of the ways in which we're advancing a just and circular economy of food in Vancouver, and eager to learn more from our colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Meg, for your presentation. And it's really interesting to see how the approach of Vancouver that you first start mapping out and trying to understand the current status. Indeed, we cannot reduce emissions without knowing where the emissions are coming from and knowing the numbers. So I think this is a really great approach, and also having this opportunity to collaborate with many partners. It is also very interesting. Thanks a lot for your presentation.
Thanks,
now I would like to move on to Shelley from Pittburgh. Shelley, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Jiwon, it was really nice of you to have me, and for everyone else. Sorry, I'm doing my own tech today, so please forgive me for the hesitation. Is that working now? There we go. One more time. There we go. Hi, I'm Shelley Danko-Day. I am the food policy planner for the city of Pittsburgh. I've been with the city doing food policy work for 7.5 years. My background is in urban agriculture, and I received my master's in food studies from Chatham University. So I came into this job with the goal of enabling residents to be able to attain food sovereignty, to allow residents to define their own food and agriculture systems. So we started with updating our zoning code, which did exist to allow people to have bees and chickens, but it was really expensive, and it took quite a long time, like 6 months, for someone to get a permit. So we reduced the cost and made it an over-the-counter permit. And in addition, we changed the language to allow renters, not just homeowners, to be able to keep chickens and ducks and miniature goats. We added miniature goats to that. We also defined compost in our municipal code to allow composting to happen in the city. We recently just received, in the last couple weeks, a USDA grant, shout out to my colleague Afton, for a community composting pilot, which we're really excited about. The next thing we did was, it was something that was mandated and recommended through the open space plan that was published in 2013, was to create an adopt-a-lot program for residents, to allow residents to access city-owned land for food, flower, or rain gardens. As is the case with many other cities, Pittsburgh has more than our share of vacant lots. We have over 7,000 vacant lots. As you're probably familiar, several decades ago, when industries closed, people left their houses, just abandoned them. They fell into disrepair, and we had to demolish them for public safety reasons. So that leaves us with a lot of vacant land that gets overgrown because we just don't have the resources to maintain them. They can become blight for communities. So enabling this land to be used for community gardens, for growing spaces, for beautification projects makes a lot of sense. To date, we have close to 17 acres of land in adopt-a-lot production, and the majority of those projects are food production. And there are 6 acres that are in areas, 6 acres of food growing space actively being grown, that is in areas where there's acute food insecurity. And food insecurity, just to define it briefly so we're all on the same page, food insecurity is the ability for someone to have enough food to live a healthy, active life. And so I was asked this question all the time, and by counselors and different staff, like if you're the food policy planner, what is food insecurity and where is it? So we created the Feed Pittburgh report, and it was published in 2020. And it outlines the causes of food insecurity and maps out the problem where food insecurity is experienced most acutely and offers recommendations for action on this. Our mapping used a variety of data and broke it down by census tracts. And then we provided to each counselor a map of their specific district that included sources of food access that's available, including farmers markets and grocery stores and food pantries. So they knew exactly what the problem was like in their district. So while setting the groundwork for local food production, we also set out to create more urban-rural connections. We're the largest population center in southwestern Pennsylvania, and thus the largest market for the surrounding areas' farms. So we hosted a speed networking event, which was really fun. We brought together the buyers, the chefs, the store owners, and then the sellers, the farmers, the small food producers throughout the region, and they each got 2 minutes with each other, and then we switched it up. It was really a lot of fun. We also conducted a study of our farmers markets. There are over 25 markets happening during the season. Every day you've got a farmers market in the city of Pittburgh. And those markets never really communicated with each other. So just doing the farmers market study acted as a catalyst for networking between the various market managers and led to increased coordination and collaboration between all the markets that occur in our city. We also did community outreach, or we started to do some community outreach with the Feed Pittburgh report, because a report is just data. It's not really including the residents' voices. So that's really what we needed to do. So we partnered with the Food Policy Council, and we're convening a group of residents that have been selected from a pretty large applicant pool to serve as food equity ambassadors to advise the city on key action to increase food security. And we also did a food access network. We created this food access network from the outreach we did that brought together the people who are the residents who are providing informal food access to their neighbors. So not your food pantries or the Meals on Wheels, but the people who, Miss Smith, who lives down the street, and she picks up extra boxes when she goes to the food pantry and delivers them to her neighbors. So we created a place where those folks could connect with each other in the various neighborhoods and share resources and best practices, and just connect on points of improvement for that current system. And that is a quick summary of what we're doing here in the city of Pittburgh around food.
Thanks a lot, Shelley. So first of all, congratulations on the compost pilot project. That sounds really exciting. And I'm very curious to hear more about the speed dating that you did, that the city facilitated with all the different actors. This sounds really amazing. And also it's really a great way for us to see what kind of role that the cities could play to bring the different actors and to really put them together and promote collaborations among them. So this is a really great presentation. Thanks a lot, Shelley. What I also saw from your presentation was that after the economic shift, there was a lot of vacant land that you were able to repurpose afterwards. And I think this is a really good segue to our first question. And I think this will be actually our first and last question that I as a moderator will be asking to our panelists, because we're running a bit out of time, is about the transatlantic similarity. And again, all the three cities have gone through the economic shifts, and then we call it the transatlantic similarity, as you all are post-industrial legacy cities. And within this framework, we would like to ask you, and I would like to ask each of the panelists, what are your city's challenges and opportunities for tackling climate change in the field of food and agriculture that you have experienced so far? And I would like to, we will follow the same order. I will first ask Alessa to answer this question, and then Meg, and then on to Shelley.
Yeah, thank you, G1, for introducing the next part. So when I thought about the question of, what are the opportunities and challenges of this post-industrial legacy that we all share, I came up with different criteria or characteristics that I guess we all have, and I maybe just mention them. And I think like for every characteristic, there are both opportunities and challenges. And I guess I can imagine that for the other cities, it's a bit similar. So the dense population, of course. So we all live in very highly dense, dense populations. We have multicultural society in Dortmund. So this, of course, has a lot of effects on the diversity in food culture, putting the food on the agenda of pleasure and having cultural diversity while cooking and farming and gardening. We have economic structural change, of course. So the economies is one more characteristic. And we have a very complex region, which I especially find very interesting as a characteristic when starting the journey towards more climate resilient food systems, because we first have to know about what happens and where are really the challenges. So this week I still had a conversation with the Dortmund statistic colleagues, and we just talked about how to know about food poverty in Dortmund, just to tackle also the matter of social equity, which is highly linked to climate resilient food systems. Because if we talk about regionalization and good food, we have the problem that good food is the most expensive food in Dortmund and not the most affordable, which is of course a big problem. And we first have to know a lot of things about the system, and there we for example, due to the economic shift, we have now a lot of research institutions and universities in and around Dortmund who can help us now to just start the journey and look on what we need to know to really establish more sustainable food systems. And I could say a lot about every characteristic now and the opportunities and challenges, but maybe I would give the word to the other two colleagues from the other cities.
Thanks, Alessa. I totally agree. I think that one of the characteristics that we share and that many cities share around the world, not just those that are post-industrial, or are the limits of jurisdiction. Right? If you map the food cycle across cities, very little of the food cycle actually occurs in cities, the majority of the consumption, but not its production or the utility of food remainders to be used in regenerative agriculture. And so we have this very limited capacity to affect the food system as a whole, but only to set policies and strategies within what is actually happening within the city. So that's certainly a characteristic we share. And it's clear that we've all moved towards strategies to address that limitation, that convene, right, that bring partners and different food sector agents together and allow that fermentation, good food metaphor, to occur between food system agents, so they can also find their own way through to a more just and circular food system where the municipality can regulate the production or distribution of waste. So I think that that's a key similarity. I also, well, I don't know this, I might test this with you both actually. One of our challenges in Vancouver, probably in many cities, is being able to identify and foresee synergies between policies and actions, actions being regulations, I suppose, and then supporting them to produce co-benefits. For example, Vancouver has a very forward-looking green building policy and or bylaw, and we have mandated that all new buildings will have a green roof. However, for the most part, it's very expensive to make a green roof accessible and productive in an agricultural sense. And so seeing that synergy, acting early to ensure that the co-benefits could be realized as green roofs are being installed across the city would have been a great advantage. However, the policymakers and those different areas of focus weren't at the same stage of development, and so weren't able to act in a coordinated way. But we will in the future, after speed dating.
Excellent. I have to say that I'm not taking full credit for that idea. I got the idea from DC. I heard on the radio that they were doing that, and so I thought, why not? So we did 4 of them, and then COVID hit. So we'll have to pick that up again. As far as our challenges here in Pittsburgh, I think food advisors, food policy planners around the country and around the world, obviously, but particularly I think in the United States, we have a problem with capitalism and our food system. And people say the food system is broken. Well, no, it's designed, it's working exactly the way it was designed to work, and it's leaving a lot of people behind, as a lot of capitalism does. And so it becomes this sort of struggle for whose problem is it? Who is the one to solve this problem? And nobody really actually knows what the problem is specifically. So breaking it down into tiny little pieces, I always like to say it's like eating an elephant, one bite at a time, tiny little, otherwise you'll be overwhelmed and just burnt out really quick. But when you think about it, when you think of resilient cities, air, water, and food are the 3 things that every human everywhere on the planet needs to survive. Air is free, water is pretty low cost, but food, we have to pay dearly for good quality food. And so that's, any resilient city is going to have, the resilient population is going to have enough food. So I think it's really key, and I think it's a communication issue at some point, and getting the message across. I really think that's the biggest obstacle we have, but there's also the opportunity because there are so many people working in parts of this. So we have the work that I was telling you about in my presentation, that's just what the city is doing, the government, the municipality of Pittsburgh. There are organizations out there, there's Grow Pittsburgh, there's Grounded, there's Operation Better Block. They're working on the ground, they're creating these gardens, they're creating training programs. They're creating, we have 412 Food Rescue who's saving food, and our food banks, the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank has been rescuing food that would otherwise go to waste and go into the landfill for years. So those things, if we're bringing them together in various ways around this compost project, around the Food Matters and our DC project, around an urban ag working group to identify land for larger scale growing situations that might not feed everybody, but it's bringing this coordination and this collaboration across the city and across these systems that, hopefully there will be, I always call it magic. When people get together, magic happens, and you never know when you have this networking, when you have this collaboration, coordination, interaction, you never know what can happen. And I believe in that.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for this wonderful discussion. I can see there are quite a lot of similarities among the 3 cities, and I really think this is one of the first stepping stones for a greater collaboration among the 3 cities. So thanks a lot for this. Actually, I'm seeing that there are quite a lot of questions, but I think we can only address one. So I will hand it over to Malora to quickly mention one of the questions and to whom this is addressed to.
Thanks, Yuan. Well, let's see. We have, sorry, my video was off. Hi. We do have one from, let's see. All right, so this is an addition to Alessa's presentation from Dortmund, that the total of Dortmund allotments alone is around 1,000 acres with around 10,000 individual plots in 167 areas. And given that on each plot, around 300 kilograms of food are produced per year, making it an asset in itself. So if Alessa had anything she wanted to comment on that about the connections.
I think the topic of allotment gardens is a quite relevant for Dortmund, because due to the history, people started farming and started creating these sites of allotment gardens. And I think what is just remaining now from this historical development is now, of course, a big opportunity for, I would call it substance economy in a way, if you produce so much food on your own plots. And of course, it's a kind of regionalization strategy if we look at it under the umbrella of climate change and having short distances. Although I would not say that this model would feed the city, because we need much more fresh fruit and vegetables. Therefore, I really think that we have to make these connections to the large rural areas around the entire Ruhr area, to really connect with farmers and to give them to give them reliability on food demand from the city, and also to give them security in terms of producing organically as well, because you always need several years for changing your farming system to an organically certified produce in terms of soil, etc. And farmers just need the security from us, also with regards to the fact that farms are just dying in Germany because they have so much economic pressure.
Thank you. I have another question here from Saskia Richards. In many ways, the failing agriculture food production policies limit the sustainable sources. How do cities approach this? And is it possible for urban administrations to influence federal and regional law on food production?
Is this something that Meg or Shelley would like to take on?
More? Okay, I unmuted first. Shelley, feel free to jump in. So I mean, all cities have three ways in which they can influence the economy or make changes in their area. They are to invest, apply investments and procurement to shift what is available for consumption, for example. They advocate to other levels of government, and they regulate, of course. So utilizing those three tools, there are actually many opportunities to influence the agricultural systems that surround Vancouver, unlike our other cities here, in order to shift what comes into the city, what is available for purchase, what is procured by the city. For example, the city of Vancouver runs concession stands with the Parks Board in all of our public parks, not all of them, the bigger public parks. And the food that is sold at those concession stands is determined by the city of Vancouver. And therefore, it can be aligned to the policies, strategies, and commitments that the city has put forward, particularly in this case, right around food. We do have some notable moments when the Parks Board offered up an entrepreneur opportunity for small food companies to sell in temporary locations around the parks in the city. And one case in particular went from, I think, 30,000 revenue in one year to 2 million revenue the next year because of that opportunity to sell on Vancouver's seawall during tourist season in particular, and that's a local berry distributor. So only purchasing berries of all kinds from local farmers and then directly selling them to consumers, most of which, frankly, were eaten right on the seawall right there because they're sold in that state. So I think there are opportunities across those three areas of influence that the city should be looking to and leveraging to influence the food system that grows outside of the city itself.
Yeah, Meg covered a lot of it. That's really great. The city is kind of limited in what it can do. The city of Pittsburgh, the food for our recreation centers and for our senior centers comes from we don't directly buy that. We contract that out. So we do work with those entities like Pittsburgh Public School, who make some of our recreation center meals. They haven't switched over to the good food purchasing program yet, but that's something that they're entertaining, and we're very supportive of that and encouraging of that. Our farmers markets, creating that direct market for the farmers to sell to our residents, is a huge part of that, and that's why we want to strengthen that as much as we can. And also, as much as we can, we do buy local produce and encourage others. There's an organization called Sustainable Pittsburgh, who has a Sustainable Pittsburgh restaurant program, and they work to encourage restaurants, and we work very closely with that, encourage restaurants to buy local food, and we work very closely with them and utilize the restaurants that do the most towards purchasing local. So
I want to jump in. I know we're moving to the next session. The very last thing to say is that similarly to Pittsburgh, we have innumerable not-for-profits that are working on the food system, that are working on food insecurity, that are better distributing healthy and locally produced foods, but they are in a state of great instability. The real estate market in Vancouver means that they're always scrambling for grants and other forms of revenue so that they can stay afloat. And this is an opportunity for cities to provide stability, space, operational space for not-for-profits that are doing that really important work so that they can work harder on the root causes of food insecurity as opposed to addressing that really urgent need of hunger. Thanks.
Thanks everyone for this wonderful response. I can really feel that it was a rather short panel discussion. We could have stayed for hours and hours, and I think we were not able to address all the questions. So I encourage everyone to continue the discussion with the panelists when we all move to Wonder after the closing of the session. Just a final note on the global scale, we were talking about the local and national scale, and on the global scale, there's also numerous international initiatives on linking urban food system and climate change. The Glasgow Declaration on Food and Climate Change is one of them, which will be launched in 2 weeks at COP. And yesterday, today, and tomorrow, Milan Urban Food Policy PEC Global Forum is taking place, and Barcelona Challenge is one of the key legacies of it, and it also calls for cities and the citizens to transform their food systems as a way to tackle the climate change, the climate emergency. So those are the different initiatives, global initiatives that could really further take the cooperation further. And I'm very happy to see how the three cities exchange with each other, and I believe that these initiatives could take the urban diplomacy to the next level. So I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the amazing panelists here. Thank you so much, and Laura, for your wonderful facilitation, and the audience, and thank you so much. And Laura, back to you for the second panel.
Thank you, Jiwan. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussions on Wonder too. I have questions, but we're moving on to panel 2. So panel 2 is on urban farming, facets, challenges, and solutions. The moderator is Dr. Mace Jaffrey. Dr. Jaffrey is a research scientist and urban planner with international experience in academic research in the MENA region, Germany, and the USA. She works at the City of Dortmund, Department of Urban Renewal, as project coordinator of the EU Horizon 2020 research project, Productive Green Infrastructure for Post-Industrial Urban Regeneration. She also works at TU Dortmund University and coordinates the DAAD research project about climate planning in Germany and Iran. So I will turn it now over to Mace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malora. And I would like to thank the panelists for the former session, for the very interesting discussion about urban food strategies from the top-down perspective. So in our session, we will address it from the other way around, the bottom-up. And so in the beginning, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mace Jafari, and it's wonderful to see that many people from all over the world are here today and from different time zones. And and I'm delighted to be here too today. And I welcome you to our panel on urban agriculture, facets, challenges, and solutions, which I have the pleasure to moderate. So urban farming, and by that we mean allotment, indoor vertical farms, aquaponic systems, and food forests, has the potential to reduce cities' greenhouse gas emission and create resilient urban food supply in times of world hunger and climate change. Urban farming has become increasingly popular and important as the world population grows more and more, and more people are moving now to cities. And the United Nations predicts that by 2030, 2/3 of the world population will be living in cities, and with the urban population in developing countries doubling. So it's getting more important to decrease long-distance food transportation and waste production. And by that, build resilient urban food supply and circular food economy, innovation in high-tech indoor farms, community gardens, edible public spaces, and city farms. So in our panel, best practices and lessons learned on urban farming projects in the cities Dortmund, Vancouver, and the Netherlands and other countries in the world will be presented. The panelists will also discuss the challenges and solutions regarding their implementations on the ground. I would like to welcome the three panelists today. We have Bernd Polling from Dortmund, Germany. He's an urban farming and aquaponic food production system expert from the South Westphalia University of Applied Science, Department of Agriculture. And Michael Ebelman from Vancouver, Canada, co-founder and director of Soul Food Street Farms, and Jan Westra from Delay in the Netherlands, strategic business developer at Priva. And before we start with our panel, I'd like to give some information about the organization of the session. So we have 30 minutes from now for the entire session. Each panelist will give a 5-minute presentation about his project. The Q&A session will begin after the three panelists are finished with their presentations. However, I'd like the audience to write their questions in the chat box, and please indicate the panelists you're addressing, so it will be easier to refer to the exact panelist. And the question will be answered when all panelists are finished. And and I'd like to remind you, just like Shiwan mentioned and Malora, that even if we didn't manage to answer all the questions, there will be the opportunity to ask the questions directly to the panelists in Wonder. So please keep this in mind. And the link to Wonder is posted already in the program, but it will be written in the chat box towards the end of our session. Okay, so we're starting with the first contribution, and I'd like to invite Bernd Polling to tell us about urban agriculture projects in Dortmund, and in particular about ProGeric project for nature-based solutions. And just a short introduction about you, Bernd. So Dr. Bernd Polling, he's urban farming expert from the South Westphalia University of Applied Science, Department of Agriculture in Zost, Germany. He conducts research and teaching activities in the field of urban farming, regional food systems, and urban-rural linkages. He's being active in several national and EU projects on urban farming, productive green infrastructure, and in new entrants into farming. One flagship project is the EU-funded Horizon 2020 project, which is about planning, implementing, and assessing nature-based solutions in post-industrial sites, including food forest, permaculture orchid, and aquaponic in Dortmund. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Dear May, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Dear all, it's been really a great pleasure to be here and giving a short introductory speech or some minutes of talking on urban agriculture in the metropolitan area in Dortmund and around. So as it was already introduced by Mays, I'm working at the University of Applied Sciences, which is situated in Soest, which is a rather small city near Dortmund. For what reason we are working also on urban and peri-urban farming since quite a while in research and implementation projects. And we really try to bring these topics of urban agriculture and urban food systems also into our educational curricula. We have quite a multidisciplinary team at our university in this field. So we are on the one hand looking on social innovations, on tech innovations like aquaponics. So I'm coming back to the aquaponics in a minute. But we are also working on business models, but also the social acceptance of food produced in cities. And also we are covering multifunctionality of urban agriculture, how to combat climate change, how to mitigate or adapt to climate change, how to reduce food miles, and all these kind of things. And just having our background in mind, so we are kind of a traditional Department of Agriculture from a locally bound University of Applied Sciences. That means quite a shift from a rural perspective to an urban perspective. So we are no longer only looking on agriculture and rural development, but more and more looking also to the urban sphere. What's happening with food production in urban and peri-urban areas? How can producers and consumers be brought together again? So these are all the issues we are talking about. And we, in total, let's say, see three big components under urban agriculture, urban farming. One is the peri-urban sphere. It was already introduced by Alessa Heuser in the panel 1, how to bring in all the farmers producing food in and around Dortmund and the larger metropolitan area of Ruhr. That's not only concerning the successors of well-established farms, but also newcomers and new entrants into farming with new ideas like rent-a-field concepts or community-supported agriculture concepts, food assembly strategies, and so on. The second one is on mainly urban gardening, community gardening, and also the allotment gardens. They were introduced already in one of the first discussion rounds. And thirdly, the tech innovations, and also looking for new places in inner city areas where to produce food. And then we are coming to indoor places, vertical systems, and aquaponics. So just to give you a few pictures from the Dortmund area, I would like to share my screen for a minute. And here you can see some, you might say, boring or traditional or not fancy types of food production, but that's taking place in Dortmund in the peri-urban sphere. And here we have the big challenge of establishing sustainable, resilient urban-rural linkages, really to result in a regional and urban food system for Dortmund, but also for other cities. But in the remaining very few seconds, or let's say a minute, I will focus more on two other types we are doing in the ProDirect project. It's funded under Horizon 2020 of the European Union, productive green infrastructure on post-industrial sites. And there we are planning, implementing, and assessing different types of nature-based solutions. And two types are directly linked to food production. One is community-based urban farming, urban gardening, and the other one is aquaponics. Both NBS with regard to food production are also taking place in Dortmund in the district of Huckade. And here you can see a picture of a new established food forest and permaculture orchard we are about to set up on a church premise together with the Girls and Boys Scout and other people involved. So transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary team working together. And here I would like to highlight also our NGO from the city of Dortmund, Die Urbanisten. They are doing pioneering work in the field of urban agriculture. So they do a lot of work with citizen involvement. So they are really an important component to bring the citizens into these kinds of projects, working together with the citizens. What are their expectations? What are their needs? What are their skills and qualifications to bring into these types of activities to bring back food really into the residential areas, like here in Huckade in Dortmund. And the other one is on aquaponics. So on a post-industrial site in Dortmund, at the coking plant Hansa in the northwestern parts of Dortmund, we are developing 2 greenhouses with 2 aquaponic systems. So a circular and resource-efficient combination of fish raising and hydroponic vegetable production. We are about to establish 2 greenhouses because of the idea to increase the technology readiness level of that aquaponic system, but on the other hand, also to try different ways of how to bring citizen involvement also in these kind of controlled environment agriculture. So these are just 2-3 spotlights on urban farming initiatives taking place in Dortmund. And with that, I would like to stop here to give some time also for the other colleagues and the other panelists and some more discussions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernd, for your presentation. And I'm sure the audience have many questions about what you just showed us, especially about the social innovation and the participation of the local citizens and the scouts you just mentioned. So this is something, I eager myself to learn more about. And aquaponic, especially it's a newly introduced in Dortmund, and I know it's now the build permit is already approved. So maybe we will learn more. Yeah, congratulations on that, and we will learn more about the further development or the next steps. Okay, so I'd like to move now to the next presentation by Michael Abelman. And Michael is the founder and director of Soul Food Market Street Farms, one of North America's large urban farm projects. Soul Food has transformed acres of parking lots and contaminated land into street farms, producing over 30 tons of food annually, and providing training and employment to individuals who are managing long-term addiction and mental health issues. He's one of the earliest pioneers of the urban agriculture movement, starting the Center for Urban Agriculture in the mid-80s in California. Abelman is the author and photographer of 5 trade published books and numerous articles and essays. He currently farms at 120-acre Foxglove farm in Salt Spring Island, producing a wide diversity of fruits, vegetables, grains, and livestock. So the floor is yours, Michael. And we're excited to hear what you have for us today. And we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Nice to be with you all. Yes, and thanks for the introduction, and what a pleasure and an honor to be with you all from around the world. As the introduction implied, I am not an academic. I do not work in policy or city government. I have been working as a farmer for the last 43 years. I'm 67 years old. Along the way, while farming in California before moving to British Columbia and doing farmers markets in the Los Angeles area, I discovered something that was rather shocking. I would visit urban areas in Los Angeles, specifically Watts. Maybe some of you are familiar with the Watts community. It's a renowned area for its high infant mortality rates, violence, etc. But we would see numerous abandoned lots, many people without work, and a community that had virtually no access to fresh food. And I put these things together in my head, and in the early 1980s started what I called the Center for Urban Agriculture. At that time, when you use the words urban and agriculture in the same sentence, people looked at you rather strangely. And I'm fascinated by how that movement has evolved. We started a 3-acre project at 103rd and Grape in Watts. And eventually I found myself 1,400 miles north in British Columbia. I do want to say that I have a particular bias. I am concerned that many of these events that I participate in focus on the discussion around urban food systems and urban agriculture in somewhat of a silo. And I don't think it's possible, practical, or sensible to have these conversations without taking a more integrated approach. As much as we might like to, we are not going to feed our urban populations entirely from within our cities. We are still dependent on peri-urban and urban and rural areas to do so. And so I think a better, more holistic, forgive the word, conversation includes those that are working in the rural and peri-urban area. What is the appropriate integration between rural, urban, and peri-urban? What's appropriate to grow where and what quantities? What are the relationships between those three areas? So I think this is important, and I think it was touched on by some of our previous presenters, but I think it's really important. I'm going to just tell you briefly about our work in Vancouver at Soul Food Street Farms, and then I'll show you a few slides. We have 2 primary goals. The first and foremost, our goal is providing meaningful working opportunities to individuals who are dealing with long-term addiction and mental illness. We operate on the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is the lowest income neighborhood in the entire country. Our second goal is to provide what I call a credible model of urban agriculture. And when I say credible, I'm talking about production urban agriculture. And so we started 13 years ago to begin to develop systems that would demonstrate that you could, in fact, create economically viable agricultural enterprises in the city on small spaces. And we've been working on that model for the last 13 or 14 years. Soul Food represents 90%, that's 90% of urban agriculture in the city of Vancouver. And we've been at it for quite a while. I'm going to show you a few slides, if I can possibly pull this off here. Okay, now I just need to do the screen share. Can you see that? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So this is the neighborhood that we work in. It's just roughly about a 12 square block area that is almost entirely inhabited by folks who are dealing with long-term addiction, mental illness, material poverty. Whoop. How do I change these slides here? There we go. I'm going to breeze through these quickly. This gives you some context for where we operate. Okay. And this is one of our sites before we developed it into an orchard. This is fairly sophisticated agricultural systems. I brought a farmer's instinct into the city. So we were focused on production. And I think, as was mentioned, we're producing about 40 tons per year of food entirely with the hands of people who had no prior agricultural experience. This is an urban orchard producing a range of fruits. Also, we created, all of these systems are based on an innovative box system that allows us to address 2 of the most fundamental issues in every city in the world: pavement and contaminated soils, and the high cost of land that require moving on short notice. So we developed an innovative system that addresses all three of those issues. These trees are growing in those boxes. You can see them. These trees are now 30 feet tall with, producing things like Shiro plums, persimmons in Vancouver, if you can imagine that. We have, traditionally we had 4 different sites in Vancouver. We're now consolidated on one location. This is Kenny, our first neighborhood farmer, Miranda, Cam, Donna, Alan, Jesus, and Lyle. Yep. Oh. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I will say that I think I hope we can touch on some of the on the ground, hands in the soil challenges with the work that we do. And working in a municipal environment where the regulations and the codes were not written to support this type of activity, and often finding we are up against the city rather than being supported by the city. And other challenges that I think would be good to bring up just from a real hands on the ground practitioner's perspective. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Michael, for the very inspiring project presentation and the visuals on how urban farming can bring people together and induce social transformation. And the question you posted in your presentation about the boundaries between rural, urban, and peri-urban areas and the conflicting demands and interests of developing these areas is indeed a current planning challenge. And especially with the global pandemic, it's now this is shifting the understanding of these areas and in terms of administrative boundaries and functions of these areas. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to give the floor to the last panelist, Dr. Jan Wistra, who will provide another view of urban agriculture from a high-tech approach in the projects PRIVA implement. And Dr. Jan Wistra works at PRIVA, headquartered in the Netherlands, as a strategic business developer, mainly for complex research and development projects at the cutting edge of the horticulture, indoor farming, and building technologies. His focus area are North America and Europe. He graduated at the TU Delft Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, Department of Refrigeration and Indoor Air Control. This was his master's, and he finished his PhD at the same university on advanced absorption heat transformer, a thermal device to transform a low-grade heat without adding energy flow other than auxiliary power to high-grade heat. So technical for us to understand. In 1996, Wistra joined the PRIVA company, partly for the development of equipment of water treatment for greenhouses, partly for directing research projects with universities and colleges. So the floor is yours, Jan, to show us some of the projects you have in PRIVA.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. And you can see my screen. There you are. My bio is something. You can see my screen, I see. I want to start with apologies for yesterday with BVB and Ajax in Amsterdam. I was there and thought what's going on, but it was a soccer game. And not everything went well for the German part, they told me. But for now, let's see, I just wanted to show you some short things about what we are doing at PRIVA. So this is our Dutch office. where we do our work. This is the neighborhood we are in. So we are also biased, like Michael is. We are more biased towards the greenhouses, and gradually, I get people moving away from that and look for more innovative ways of growing food in Venlo type greenhouses, like they are evolving in 40 years or so. When you see the small arrow, that's where I'm sitting now in my small office in Schravenzande, close to the beach. And I work at Briva. We employ 500 plus people now. We are worldwide present, and we focus at horticulture, and that's mainly horticulture, protected horticulture. So in greenhouses, either glass, plastic, soft fruit. We do a lot of things on saving water in California in the strawberry and raspberry growing facilities. We work on utility buildings, only in Europe, for that matter, that we design and sell control systems that can save as much energy as possible. And horticulture and urban and utility buildings together, it's vertical farming, and I'm involved in that sort of movement, but then from the technical perspective since 2011, I think. We do our own hardware, software design, and services. We are worldwide present. We have 2 offices or 3 in North America, in the continent. So Briva America Latina. We have an office in Canada, close to Niagara Falls in Ontario, and an office in California, and of course on other places in the world. We run through a dealer network because we, as a small company, it's hard to do everything worldwide without having a good dealership, the network, so to say. And that's about it for what I want to say now. So it's not so much about urban farming, urban agriculture yet. What I want to show is another. I'll just restart again. Well, so there was about my short presentation on what we are doing. And from my end, I just want to show you something else, and that's more that we run into the same type of issues as that Michael runs into, in terms of what can you do, what type of people are working with you. And here I am. Here we are. And go to the last slide. Oh, sorry for that. It's I'll just skip one. Maybe I should share this. It's okay. I'll stop sharing. And there we go. What we found out in a lot of these urban farming or vertical farming settings is I personally support the World of Wallace in its Dortmund endeavor in how to reframe, how to rephrase Phoenix West with buildings, but also with food production for Dortmund. I'm working a little bit. When I'm in Detroit, I try to help out Gary Wozniak of Recovery Park, and he's really struggling for 10, 15 years in getting greenhouses in the impoverished areas in Detroit, like in Pittburgh, like you showed on the East Hastings. We have these areas in Detroit as well, of course, and the normal, the more charity-like food systems work well, but whenever you go more commercial, you want to employ people, give them a livable wage, then you're not working with the city, but against the city, is what I found there, to my amazement, actually. You all want the same, but you end up with all different ideas of doing that. And I don't have a picture of that, but in the end, our CEO came up with the idea of the Sustainable Urban Delta, where we established the foundation, and it's at the heart, it's at the food, energy, water nexus. So how can we tie everything together in terms of food, water, and energy? In how can we make it work in city spaces, in urban environments, of course. And therefore, whenever somebody comes with a new idea, we usually step in. So we did some aquaponics control systems. We did some seaweed control systems as well. see how we can make that work. And just as a reminder, the Wageningen University in the Netherlands has the Urban Greenhouse Challenge. And it's a challenge for students from all over the world. We sponsor that. And the interesting thing, they are now focusing at an area in Washington, D.C. How can we put a greenhouse there, and can we adapt technology that's available to the local situation where it's feasible for the people to use it? And I think that's a challenge in how to use high tech, low tech, and how can we make that work, that it's also a viable enterprise instead of just growing food, so to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan, for your presentation and for introducing sustainability from a high-tech but also low-tech technological approach. And Phoenix Z is indeed a successful example in Dortmund, and it won a prize already for its design and for the planning of this the development of this post-industrial area. And I surely look forward to see this part of innovation of bringing food production to Phoenix West, because it's the public space is functioning perfectly there, although it has high-end buildings and residential areas, but still it's a gathering space, and this is what functioning successfully. And yeah, so we look forward to see the development of food production in that area, especially the aquaponics. So maybe this is something we can learn for ProGeric, how to develop aquaponic systems. And of course, yeah, thank you for mentioning the part that you're collaborating with universities, because this is another important aspect for innovation, is the interdisciplinarity and to integrate research and testing the results with students and with the local community as well. So yeah, we have some 10 minutes for a Q&A session, and I see that we have some questions. So I already have questions, but I'll give the priority to the audience. So I see a question from Susanna Harting, and the question is, which fish do you hold at Dortmund aquaponic plant? I'm interested in learning details about the circular aspect at aquaponic manufacture. Thanks. I think this question is to you, Bernd.
Yeah, at least I can start to trying with an answer. Thank you very much for raising the question. And I have to acknowledge that the aquaponic expert is not here today, because he just became father for the second time yesterday only. So that's a good reason not to be here present. But anyway, I will try to answer your question. So as long as it concerns the post-industrial site in Huckarde, so far we have only accomplished kind of the building permission. So we are still in the planning phase and before implementation of the aquaponic unit. But of course, we have some plans, and as well, we have also the NGO, the Urbanisten, as well as at our university campus, we do have some small demonstration units of aquaponics, and there we also struggle with some administrative institutional issues, like talking with a veterinary inspection office, for example, not to end up as an animal experiment, just to say it frankly. So in the end, we had to decide to go for catfish, European catfish, for some first trials, but also looking for rainbow trout, for example, as well as shrimps or other non-fish seafood to be integrated into aquaponic systems. Then to make it a short answer on the fish side, but we are really happy to have a good team together there in Dortmund with two SMEs, City Botanicals and Aquaponic Manufacture from our region, as well as the NGO and our university working there together on looking for good solutions on how to raise fish and grow vegetables in the circular system. Yeah, but probably Jan can add some issues on aquaponics as well.
Yeah. Can I have the floor, Nice?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, we ran the test, and that's well, again, we look into the technology. So we grew tomatoes with tilapia, but tilapia is not a fish people in the Netherlands eat so often, but it's more the chicken type of fish. So whatever you put a sauce on, it tastes like that. So we did tilapia for that matter, because then we could develop the technology. And we did tilapia and tomatoes in a setting. We did it with a group from Switzerland. They were in Basel and also in The Hague. We ran some tests, and I think 3 years ago, I visited a site in Berlin, close to the beer fabric, where they are building. I think it's ESA or so, where they grow tilapia together with fish. And the challenge is not to go overboard in technology. But to make it, to keep it simple, to make it work. And first of all, trout would be better. Try to find what do people want to eat before you start growing them and killing them, and then finding nobody wants it. And there are different ways in doing tilapia or doing aquaponics together with food. But I don't want to go into that over here now. But I'm eager to go to Dortmund and see it all and discuss.
Yeah.
It's just a 3 hours drive or so.
Thank you, Jan and Bernd, for your answers. We have another comment and question from Sasika Richards. And so she's commenting, do cities investing into urban farming system very interesting? And asking, have you set yourselves quantitative goals targets for the share of contribution to city food consumption, supply to demand, and or employment in urban farms created? So maybe this question to you, Michael, about the economic dimension of food production. If this is something was a target from the beginning, or it developed in the course of the project.
Yeah, so for us, as a working farmer, when I started this project, I was fixated on the desire to see us completely financially self-sufficient within a couple of years. But because of the nature of the people that we are employing, I had to accept that we were never going to operate on the same playing field as a commercial farm. Most commercial farms do not pick people up from jail, take them to the hospital, provide rain gear, a breakfast program, driver's ed, economic literacy, and all those things to support the population we're employing. There's a cost. So 50% of our revenue is earned revenue from products grown and sold, roughly in the range of $400,000 to $500,000 a year, and the remainder is charitable funds that support the social part of our agenda. There's no question that the work we do would be economically viable within a normal agricultural context, but that's not our primary goal. I think that it's important to say as well that the challenge of what we've done in the city of Vancouver has been exacerbated by the extreme costs that the city have placed on us for permitting. A single site that we have acquired to farm on a lease basis will cost us upwards in the range of $30,000 just for the permit process. That is not encouragement for this type of enterprise. And I feel that this is not intentional on the part of the city. The city put forward an urban food policy, which had exactly the opposite effect. Since that policy was put into place, those that were trying to do this in the city of Vancouver have dropped out. We have been one of the few operations that have remained. So I think that if you're going to look at the economic viability of farming in the city, you have to address the extreme cost of the permitting process, the lack of access to land, the extreme high value of land. We currently operate on some of the highest value land in the world. And the city's real estate department acts just like any real estate department. Their primary goal is the highest value for revenue for the city, not the social, ecological goals that we have. So there's, I think there's a lot of work to do to bring what is now talk into line with reality. And I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but we've been looking at this for 13 or 14 years. Again, I think the city's intention is good, but I think by the time it trickles through the vast bureaucracy, it becomes very difficult for an operation like ours to work in that. And we are now down to, we have 3 years and we will be no longer able to operate in the city of Vancouver because of the lack of access to land there, which is a sad story, but true. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your answer. And this is indeed an issue, like in big cities and in metropolitan areas, urban green space, spaces that are contested spaces due to high land price and the conflicting interest of the different sectors to develop these areas. And this is something, yeah, I think green projects or projects, urban farming projects are yeah, suffering from. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone and all our panelists for their great contributions. And I'm sorry if we can't address all questions, but as I mentioned, there will be the chance to discuss these questions directly with the panelists in Wonder. And yeah, so this will take place directly after the summary speech by Mr. Martin Frick in a while. So thank you, everyone, and it's been a pleasure to be here with you all.
Thank you, Mace. Thank you, everyone. These panels are so interesting for me. It's interesting to be able to hear more about the challenges that you're all facing and the solutions you're coming up with. I know they're not easy problems to solve, or we all would have solved them a long time ago. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Martin Frick. He is the Deputy of the UN Secretary General Special Envoy for the Food Systems Summit 2021. He served previously as the Senior Director of the UN Climate Change, where he was overseeing the implementation of the Paris Agreement and the Secretariat's climate action work. As Program Director for former Secretary General Kofi Annan's foundation, he developed the founding narrative of climate justice. He previously served as Director for Climate Change at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. I will hand it over to you, Dr. Frick. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Laura, thank you very much indeed. And this has been a fascinating discussion. I'm almost ashamed to start with such a bureaucratic job title when the last thing we just heard that there is too much red tape and it's difficult for good entrepreneurial approaches to find spaces in cities. I would like to do two things. One is very briefly tell you what this Food Systems Summit was, and I will do that in 1 minute because we are running out of time. It was basically an attempt over 1.5 years to have an all of society, all member states of the United Nations approach to talk about food as a system. And as a result of it, we now have more than 100 countries developing national pathways to really develop a systems view on food, breaking out of the silos, having food as something which is not only a matter of ministers and ministries of agriculture, but really something that is about health, about social inclusion, about climate, about biodiversity, and so on. If you want to learn more, there's a website, foodsystems.community. So I stop at this point talking about the summit that was on the 23rd of September. But the spirit of this summit, that food actually needs breaking silos, needs people working together, resonates perfectly with this webinar and the 3 cities participating in that. My experience with the climate change process has shown me that even in the most difficult times for the climate process, the cities were a driving force. When we had the conference of the parties in Bonn, and things were very difficult because of the geopolitical situation We had at the same time ICLEI doing a summit of cities, and the cities just went ahead working towards the fulfillment of the Paris Agreement when many countries were slow. So cities are always centers of creativity and intelligence. Urban population is a smart, open, intelligent population. And what urban food approaches need is creativity. And creativity is a renewable energy that is endless, particularly in cities. But food systems is not only something for an urban elite. It is a deeply integrating way of getting all of your urban population working together. And I was super impressed from Michael's presentation that you precisely work at social hotspots and give people who are in difficult situation the most important thing, which is, yes, food, but it's even more so human dignity. Because producing your own food is not only something that is a prerequisite for health and for the nutrition of people who are often suffering because they can't afford a healthy diet, it is also something that gives meaning, connections, social inclusion. So this is absolutely fantastic. So food systems integrate, they don't separate. And if it's only that you're inviting your friends for dinner, a shared dinner is a happy dinner. And it's a dinner that is free of food waste, because the more people you cook for, the better you can integrate anyone. So why is it not happening? Why is it not happening more? And I think the answer is quite simply that in our complex societies, we tend to separate reality into the silos of different experts. A government works exactly the same way like a city parliament, in which responsibilities are given according to specific issues. So health is over here, air quality might be there, social exclusion is somebody else. And food systems is often falling between the cracks because it is seen as something that is not related to the other issues, while in reality, it's at the very heart of bringing things together. Look at the current COVID pandemic. Those who are most affected by COVID are everywhere in the world. The people who have not access to good nutrition. So they are vulnerable to a pandemic, but it's also, and mirroring the situation, often people who work in food systems, because some of the worst jobs out there are in food systems, from washing dishes in a big kitchen to being a fruit picker or working under abysmal conditions in meat processing. So once we start to understand that food is all of this, it's not only a part of the society, it's the most human thing, then we can act accordingly. We have 4.5 billion people worldwide who depend on food systems for their livelihoods, directly or indirectly. At the same time, 3 billion people cannot afford healthy food. And then on the other hand, it is actually so cheap to build your own food systems, to start urban gardening. And again, creativity is there in unlimited resources. Incredibly impressive to see entire gardens that are mobile, that are built in containers, that are independent from often polluted soils. So my last sentence is, what we need is connections. We need to speak across the silos. We need to share our experiences. We need to understand the centrality of the issues. And this event, Bridging 3 Cities, is a fantastic approach for network building. And again, I would like to direct you to the foodsystems.community website, where for every topic that might be of interest for you, you will find a global community of practitioners to connect with. And with that, Malora, I hope I didn't speak for too long. I'm happily handing back to you, and congratulations to everyone for a fantastic event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Frick. Those are inspiring words. So I would like to invite everyone now to move over to Wonder, where we can have some more interactive discussion and conversation. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. It was a delight to see participants registered from all over the world for our pilot event. We will be making the recording available, so please check your emails for us, and also check for emails from us about future events. I'd like to give a special shout out and thank you to Tony and Luis from ICTAX for managing the technical side of this event and helping us move on to this Wander platform. They will be there to help us with any questions. Change is always a bit hard, and this is going to be an exercise for all of us. So please look in your chat. There is a link and a password for the Wander platform. If you, for whatever reason, lose the connection, remember that that link will also be in your registration email and on the registration website. If you're new to Wander, just know it's a fun and visual platform once you get familiar with it, but there's a bit of a learning curve. Once you're there, you'll be able to join some different discussion groups. We have created 4 climate, so there's one in climate policies, food policies, urban farming, and also John Austin from the Michigan Economic Center will be joining us there to talk about industrial regions. Just a heads up as you're switching over to please make sure you've closed any other apps that might be using your microphone, because there is a conflict we found when we were switching over, including to everyone here who has their microphone turned on for Zoom. And if you are over there and having problems, we will be broadcasting messages, and you're free to find us over there. All right, thank you very much, and we will see you on Wander.